Um, when I was younger, I wanted to be recognized. And I think all of us go through a period, and even now, you want to be recognized, you want to be honored. So in high school, most of you guys know that I played basketball. My junior year, I was picked as honorable mention, all league. Okay, so you have the first team all league, second team all league, and then back then they had honorable mention. So I was honorable mention. So I was honored because it was honorable mention, right? And then my goal for the senior year was to make the first team all league. I wanted to be honored as a first team all leaguer. I wanted to be one of the best players in the league. And that was really one of my pursuits. Not only did I want our team to win, but then individually, I wanted to be recognized as one of the best players in our league. Not only that, as one of the best players in Temple City history. I was the first Asian to play, so I wanted to be honored in that way. And I remember also growing up, as I went to seminary, I had a real tough time telling my parents that I was going to go to seminary. It took me 6 years before I really actually shared with them. Yeah. Prayed for 6 years. I was afraid, knowing that my mom and dad comes from a honorific culture, that if I told them that I was going to go to seminary and become a pastor or a missionary, and I'm not going to make that much money, that they weren't going to be happy because I wasn't honoring them. And so I was afraid to tell them, but then, I came to tell them. And to my surprise, then God, I think, worked in their hearts. They were happy for me. But as I kind of look back, and even as I kind of experienced my relationship with my parents in my sort of pastoral role, right? I tell them about church. I tell them about, our EM sometimes. And whenever I tell them good things, they're really happy. They're proud of me. It's because through that, they feel like they're being honored. There's a sense of honor, okay? And so honor is something that all of us pursue. If you say, I don't pursue honor, you're a liar. Okay? You're lying to me. I think all of us want to have a list of accolades that we can say, hey, I've done these things, right? And we want to leave a legacy. We want to be honored. But then, being honored is good, but then what is most important? What is most important in honoring someone or being honored? What is most important? That is what I want to kind of look at today as we look into this story in Judges. And as you know, we are in this series on the lessons from the Judges, right? And this is my third sermon on it. I don't know how many more sermons I'm going to have. There are 12 judges. We're skipping one, by the way. Okay, a judge named Shamgar. We're going to skip that one because there isn't much said about him. He just happened to kill like a bunch of Philistines, okay, with this like a common tool. He killed like, I think 6,000 Philistines, or 600 was it? I forget the number, but anyways, we're going to skip Shamgar, and we're going to go to the next major story regarding the judges, in the judges period. As we look at this story, what I would like for us to do is answer this question. The question of what is most important and honorable, okay? What is most important and honorable in our lives as we pursue things, as we engage in different activities? And as we look at this third major story of the Judges, we're going to come across 5 characters, okay? All the stories, movies have characters, right? And we're going to run into some interesting characters, okay? The characters are Jabin, Sisera, Deborah, Barak, not Barack Obama, but Barak, okay? And Jael, okay? So these are the 5 characters. And there are 2 women in this story and 3 men. I want to kind of see who was most honorable, okay? And so as we look at this story, I want you to also remember what I've shared with you before in the two previous times. I'm not going to read that whole thing again. By Daryl Bach, he wrote this sort of article or commentary on the state of the judges and how the canonization of the Israelites is really a reflection of the North American culture today, okay? Because we follow the culture of the Christian, at least the Christians do. The Christians follow the culture of America, okay? And it is really a canonization. It's Americanization of the Christians, which isn't all that great, okay? So I want you to have that in your mind as well. And so as we look at this story, I want you guys to, again, think about what is it that is most honorable, okay? And along the way, as we hear this story, as we look at this story, I want to point out a couple of other truths, minor truths that are there that are important for us, okay? So let's turn to Judges chapter 4, verses 1 through 24. It's a long passage. I'm going to read it for us just to kind of give you an overview of it, and then we're going to kind of delve into it afterwards, okay? So here we go. Judges 4, 1 through 24. Again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, now that Ehud was dead. So the Lord sold them into the hands of Jabin, king of Canaan, who reigned in Sisera. Sisera, the commander of his army, was based in Harosheth Hagoyim. Because he had 900 chariots fitted with iron and had cruelly oppressed the Israelites for 20 years, they cried to the Lord for help. Now Deborah, a prophet, the wife of Lepidoth, was leading Israel at that time. She held court under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim, and the Israelites went up to her to have their disputes decided. She sent for Barak, son of Abinoam, from Kadesh in Naphtali, and said to him, "The Lord, the God of Israel, commands you, go take with you 10,000 men of Naphtali and Zebulun, and lead them up to Mount Tabor. I will lead Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his troops to the Kishon River, and give him into your hands." Barak said to her, "If you go with me, I will go. But if you don't go with me, I won't." "Certainly I will go with you," said Deborah. "But because of the course you are taking, the honor will be not yours, for the Lord will deliver Sisera into the hands of a woman." So Deborah went with Barak to Kadesh. There Barak summoned Zebulun and Naphtali, and 10,000 men went up under his command. Deborah also went up with him. Now Heber the Kenite had left the other Kenites, the descendants of Hobab, Moses' brother-in-law, and pitched his tent by the great tree in Zananim near Kadesh. When they told Sisera that Barak, son of Abinoam, had gone up to Mount Tabor, Sisera summoned from Harosheth Hagoyim to the Kishon River all his men and his 900 chariots fitted with iron. Then Deborah said to Barak, "Go, this is the day the Lord has given Sisera into your hands. Has not the Lord gone ahead of you?" So Barak went down Mount Tabor with 10,000 men following him. At Barak's advance, the Lord routed Sisera and all his chariots and army by the sword, and Sisera got down from his chariot and fled on foot. Barak pursued the chariots and army as far as Harosheth Hagoyim, and all Sisera's troops fell by the sword. Not a man was left. Sisera, meanwhile, fled on foot to tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, because there was an alliance between Jabin, king of Hatzor, and the family of Heber the Kenite. Jael went out to meet Sisera and said to him, "Come, my lord, come right in. Don't be afraid." So he entered her tent, and she covered him with a blanket. "I am thirsty," he said. "Please give me some water." She opened a skin of milk, gave him a drink, and covered him up. "Stand in the doorway of the tent," he told her. "If someone comes by and asks you, 'Is anyone in there?' say no." But Jael, Heber's wife, picked up a tent peg and a hammer and went quietly to him while he lay fast asleep, exhausted. She drove the peg through his temple into the ground, and he died. Just then Barak came by in pursuit of Sisera, and Jael went out to meet him. "Come," she said, I will show you the man you're looking for. So he went in with her, and there lay Sisera with the tent peg through his temple, dead. On that day, God subdued Jabin, king of Canaan, before the Israelites. And the hand of the Israelites pressed harder and harder against Jabin, king of Canaan, until they destroyed him. That is the word of God. It was a long passage, right? I hope you guys didn't fall asleep. You know, if they were to make movies out of some of these Judges stories, it'd be a great movie. In fact, there was a movie a long time ago called Judge Dredd that was based on the book of Judges. You guys remember that movie? No? Some of you? Yeah? David does because he's older. But anyways, Sylvester Stallone was the starring person there. But anyways, they took it right from the Judges. This story, again, repeats the cycle that the Israelites went through. Do you guys remember the cycle? Yes? Nodding of head? Cycle? They have peace for a while, okay? This time they had peace for 80 years after Ehud, all right, defeated the Moabites. Remember the guy with the sword, left-handed guy? Yes? Okay, so after he defeated the Moabites, Israel held peace for 80 years. During that time, they once again sinned. They followed the ways of the Canaanites. They followed their practices. They worshiped idols, sacrificed even babies, because that's what they used to do. Detestable in the eyes of God. And they weren't being nice to each other either, okay? And so they sinned. And because they sinned, here in this story, God gives them up to who? The Canaanites. Who are the Canaanites? Canaanites are the residents, okay? Residents of the land of Israel. It was called the land of Canaan, right? And so the Canaanites, when the Israelites were supposed to wipe them out, if you look at Judges 1, 28 and following, we see that the Israelites, the tribes, failed to wipe out the Canaanites. In fact, they allow them to live amongst them. They make them their slaves, but they allow them to live amongst them. And 100 some odd years have passed, and Canaanites have rose again. And this time, rather than sending a nation from outside of the land of Canaan, God calls on the people of Canaan to subdue the Israelites. And so they muster up strength, and then they take control of the Israelites. When the Israelites were to conquer the promised land and live there as the promised land, live there being blessed by God, because they sinned, they are given up. And so these Canaanites are oppressing them. King Jabin, this guy, is oppressing them big time, okay? And then what happens is same thing happens again. They go in that cycle, right? They cry out to the Lord. And so if we look at here in the story we read, verses 1 through 3, we see the downward spiral, okay? And then they cry out to the Lord, right? And so here, look what it says in verse 3. Because he had 900 chariots, this is Sisera, fitted with iron, and had cruelly oppressed the Israelites for 20 years, they cried out to the Lord. Okay? They're being oppressed by this mighty, mighty warrior, okay, commander. And then in verse 4, it says, Now Deborah, a prophet, the wife of Lebaoth, was leading Israel at that time. Okay? We're going to backtrack a little bit. It also said, the Israelites did, in the first verse, again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, now that Ehud was dead. Okay? So their leader was dead, and so they again sinned. Now, think about this. Just because your leader, for example, let's say I die, are you guys going to spiral down to sin again? Perhaps you will. I don't know. But with the Israelites, they sinned because it says Ehud had now died. You know, I've thought about leadership a lot, not just lately, but I often think about it. I often think about our church, our children's ministry that I used to be in charge of. now EM. I think about the history of our EM. And oftentimes I thought that when we have a great leader, then the EM or whatever ministry will thrive. Okay? That is true to a certain extent. Lesson that we can learn from this is that it's not about leadership. It's about your commitment to Jesus Christ. Especially for a church, it is the commitment of the individuals collectively that is going to keep the ministry afloat, not only afloat, but to be able to thrive. It's not the leader. And so we think, right, if we get the right pastor, if we get the right leader, if we get the right teacher, then this ministry is going to thrive. In part, yes, it is true. But that's not the real truth. The real truth is our commitment. Each and every one of your commitments. And so, I kind of look back at CM. Some of you guys were actually in the CM that I actually ministered in. It's crazy, right? I look back and then I looked at the people who are now older, who are EM age now. And there are so many who are not at church. There are so many who are now disconnected from church. It breaks my heart. And I look back and I go, what did I do wrong? And my wife and I would sometimes talk about it and say, gosh, if we would have trained our children with the Word of God better, if we would have done a better job, then gosh, these people who are struggling would not be struggling, that they would be standing with God, that they would be walking with Jesus. We thought about that. You know what? That's so prideful, though. What are we? What are we? We're just servants. I want you guys to know leaders are simply servants that are there for the time to serve you. It is up to you. It's your commitment with Jesus that's going to sustain this ministry, sustain this church, sustain your Christian life. So if I leave, or let's say if Pastor Samuel leaves, or Pastor Steve leaves, are people going to just leave? I've heard that before. No, you are committed to Jesus, not to us. And that's what Paul says. It's not about me or Peter or Barnabas. It's about Jesus Christ. Our commitment has to be with Christ. And the reason why the Israelites during the period of Judges failed over and over again is not because the leaders died off. It's because their commitment to God wasn't there. That is the reason. And so I want us to realize that. No matter who our leaders are, may your commitment to Jesus never waver. Not according to whether he or she is there, but according to whether God is there with you. And I promise you, God is there with you all the time. That's why he is good all the time. That's kind of a side point, okay? I kind of got passionate about that because I am passionate about that. I want you guys to realize that, really. And I hope the people who are not committed because so-and-so is not here or so-and-so is not there, I hope that they would realize that too and come back. Any church, I don't care if they come to our church, go to a church and be committed to Jesus Christ and his body. That's what I desire. I hope that would happen. And so let's go on with the story. And so that happens, right? And then so people are struggling. And then the Israelites have spiraled down so much. Verse 4, when it is read by the ancient Near Eastern people, it is shocking. Deborah, whoa, a woman? She is a prophet. Not only is she a prophet, she is the leader of Israel at that time. I mean, for our culture now, to have a woman president, which we might, God forbid, Okay? Not because she's a woman, but because the way she is, okay? Clinton, you guys know who I'm talking about, right? Anyways, even in our culture, this will be, if it happens, it will be the first time in the history of United States. It is rare, okay? It is even more rare back in the days for a woman to take leadership. You know what that says? That says that there were no male leaders. There were no men who would step up. And we're going to see a little bit later, okay? Even Barak, we'll get to it later, okay? But anyways, it says that there were no male leadership. And you know, church is in trouble if there are no male leadership. Church is in trouble. Early church, the 12 apostles were all male. Now, I'm not saying church cannot survive with women leadership. I mean, our denomination, we ordain women pastors, okay? I'm not saying that. But there is a function and a role that God has placed upon guys. One of them is leadership. And too many guys lack leadership. We don't have leaders. And I've addressed a little bit of this at our men's retreat. We need to, as men, step up. Step up to the plate and carry this ministry. Carry the church by being men of prayer, by men who read God's word, who are standing on God's word. We need to be that. And we need to challenge the younger men and the women to do the same. That's what we need to do. And so here, with the Israelites, Deborah, and so nobody's there, right? So God's going to raise up women leaders, okay, if no male steps up. So Deborah's there. She's a prophet, okay? And she even has a husband. Husband probably wasn't a leader either, okay? And so that speaks to marriage during that time as well. And so she steps up. And then now we're introduced to Deborah, okay? First, we're introduced to the two enemies, right? Jabin, King Jabin, and Sisera, the commander of his army, right? Now we're introduced to their enemies, which is our ally, okay? God's ally, Deborah, and then Barak. It's not Barack Obama, okay? But I think Barack Obama took the name Barak from maybe here. I hope, okay? You'll see that he has some good qualities. So Barak and Deborah now comes upon the scene. And Deborah goes, okay, and so people are struggling, all right? And so they're going to Deborah and then inquiring of her, saying, who's going to rescue us? What is God going to do? Deborah calls upon Barak, tells him he lives in southern Israel. Barak lives in northern Israel, summons him. He's probably one of the warriors, one of the army leaders, okay? And so he comes down, and she says here, look what he says, okay? We're going to go to verse 6. She sent for Barak, son of Abinoam, from Kadesh in Naphtali, and said to him, the Lord, the God of Israel, commands you, go, take with you 10,000 men of Naphtali and Zebulun, and lead them up to Mount Tabor. I will lead Sisera, this is I as in God saying, okay? I will lead Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his troops to the Kishon River, and give him into your hands. What a command, right? God is saying that. And God is saying, I will go, and I'm going to deliver Sisera into your hands. What would you do? This verse 7 ought to lead right to verse 10, which says, there Barak summoned Zebulun and Naphtali, and 10,000 men went up under his command. Deborah also went up with him. It should lead right to 10, but it doesn't. What does Barak do? He questions. He's reluctant. He goes, well, only if you go with me, I'll go. Now, this is a grown man, all right? Think about this. This is a grown man, a leader of one of the armies, right, or army of Israel. He says, well, unless you go with me, Deborah, I'm not going to go. You got to go with me. You see that, you go, what a wimp, right? Are you guys thinking that? I hope you're thinking that, because he's being a wimp. He's being reluctant. But the surprising thing is, Deborah says, I will go with you. Okay? But then she says also, because of the way you're going about doing this, okay, the honor is going to be somebody else's. And there's going to be a woman, okay? That's going to be a woman who's, to whom the commander is going to be given to, Sisera. And so you look at this, and you see the state that Israel is in, okay? I don't know how many of us here, men especially, okay? If you are commanded by God to go and do something, rather than, yes, I will go, I will do it because you are going with me, God. If we would go to somebody else, whether it's woman or somebody else, and say, you know what, unless you go with me, I'm not going to go. I don't know about this. In defense of Barak, I do want to say this. It was a normal practice for a person to say, if a prophet says, you are to do this for God, to say, as a sign of God's presence to go with me, I want you to go with me, okay? As a sign of God's presence. So he may have said this, in line with that. But most likely, that was secondary to his thoughts. He was reluctant. He was hesitant. And yet, Deborah goes with him. When I was in China, we would go to McDonald's at times because that was the only American hamburger joint that we could go to have a hamburger. Here, you got In-N-Out, Burger King, Carl's Jr. I'm not mentioning McDonald's because we have not eaten a McDonald's burger in 3 years since we came back from China, okay? But we got so many places. But we used to go to McDonald's. And then when we go to McDonald's, obviously they're all Chinese workers. And sometimes I would ask my daughters or my son to go get something for me. I would say, for example, to Caleb, I would say, Caleb, can you go and get some extra napkins? Okay? And then he didn't even know how to say chanjingzhi, which means napkin in Chinese. And he goes, Daddy, how do you say napkins in Chinese? I don't know how to say it. And then I would say, just go and say, 可以给我chanjingzhi, like that. And then he would have no questions. He would go, okay, Daddy. And he would just go up and then say it. And then he get the napkins. He goes, Daddy, here you go. And I go, good job, Caleb. On the other hand, I would ask the girls at times, right? I would do the same thing. And then the girls would go, Daddy, I don't want to do it. Can you go with me, please? That's what they would say, okay? All to say, Barak, okay, acted like a girl, a little girl. In the situation that they're in, it's almost understandable, but not quite. Because the command that is spoken by a prophet, whether it was woman or man, was that he was to go, and God was going to deliver Sisera into his hands. I mean, simple. Simple as getting a piece of napkin, really. But Barak didn't quite trust God. He was reluctant. But nevertheless, he does it. He goes, and the story kind of turns now. We have now 4 characters, right, so far? We have Jabin, King Jabin. We have Commander Sisera, right? And then we have Deborah the prophet. And then we have Barak, the commander of the Israel's army, right? And then all of a sudden in verse 11, out of nowhere, and this has nothing to do with the story that's going on now, it says, now Heber the Kenite had left the other Kenites, the descendants of Hobab, Moses' brother-in-law, and pitched his tent by the great tree in Zanaim near Kadesh. Kenites were in the southern Israel, okay? And then so this guy moves, but what does that have to do with the story? So as you're reading the story, you don't have any idea. I mean, you find out later, but so far, this has nothing to do with the story that's going on. But the author inserts that in there, okay? And then we find out later, Heber's wife, Jael, is the one who's going to kill who? I'm testing you. She's going to kill who? Commander Sisera, right? She's the one later. But check this out. As the story unfolds, okay, Barak actually goes and he summons the men of Israel, okay, and he gathers 10,000 men. Now, I want to remind you also that he's going up against 900 chariots. Whoa, 10,000 men versus 900 chariots. What's the big deal? 10,000 men would win, right? But the chariots with ironclads back then were comparable to tanks now. You try to go up against 900 tanks with 10,000 men, what's going to happen? 10,000 men will get annihilated, right? I mean, no contest, okay? And so he is going up against this great, great army of chariots as well as troops, okay? But he summons them, and then they're there at Mount Tabor, which is about 1,300 feet high, and they're looking down in the valley, and that's where Sisera gathers his chariots because they're good in the plains, right? And then so they come, and then so Barak and his army, they march down. Not a good idea, right? Marching down to fight the chariots, not a good idea. But then amazingly, it says here, God delivers them into Barak's hands. Amazing. How did that happen, you question, right? Well, if you go to chapter 5, we kind of see that, how it happened. So what happens is, in that valley was a river. That river would never flood during this time, okay? But God sends unseasonal rain during that time and floods the plain. When the plain is flooded, guess what happens to the chariots? Can't move. They're stuck in mud, okay? And that's what happens. And so chapter 5, if you want to look at it closely, if you go to verse 4 and verse 20 and 21, it talks about that. Now I'm going to read it to you guys. "O Lord, when you went out from Seir, when you marched from the land of Edom, the earth shook, the heavens poured, the clouds poured down water. From the heavens the stars fought. From their courses they fought against Sisera. The river Kishon swept them away. The age-old river, the river Kishon. March on, my soul, be strong." And so God delivers on his promise, and the army is defeated. Now, Sisera, okay, being the commander of the army, escapes. He's thinking, well, you know, they let the Canaanites survive. We grew up as a nation, and we were able to conquer Israel. If I survive, someday my descendants are going to rise up, and they're going to again conquer Israel. That's what he's thinking. So he runs on foot, okay, because he can't get the chariot to go. He runs on foot, goes to the tent of Heber, the Kenite. Now, what's interesting is Kenites had an alliance, okay, with the Canaanites. So it was given that Jael, the wife of Heber, right, welcomes Sisera and says, "Hey, welcome, come into my tent." And even Sisera says, right, if anybody comes looking for me, say, "There's nobody here," okay? Nobody here. And so gives him rest. He's sleeping in the tent. And just out of the blue, and we don't know why she does this, okay? It doesn't explain. It's just random almost. She takes a tent peg, and because the Kenites were nomads, they were experts in pitching tents. Women were experts in putting pegs into the ground with a hammer, okay? They're experts, okay? She ain't gonna miss like the women of today, like when they hammer stuff, okay? Or some guys, in fact, nowadays too, okay? And then so she takes a peg, and a hammer. He's deep in sleep because he's exhausted, right, from running away from Barak. Goes in. I think he was sleeping probably sideways like this. Right in the temple. Puts the peg there with a couple of blows. It says, it's pretty cruel. It says his body was basically pegged into the ground. His head was pegged into the ground. He's instantly dead. This seems cruel. It's inhumane almost. And to a person who was to be her ally, right? Does this. And then so what Deborah said earlier happens. Sisera will be handed over to a woman. And people, as they read this, and people, as we're reading this, we think it's Deborah, right? But no, it's not Deborah to which Sisera is handed over, but it's Jael. And we look at this whole story, and then afterwards, one more thing. Afterwards, Barak is in pursuit, hot pursuit of Sisera because he wants to get Sisera. He wants the honor. He is ambitious. He wants this accolade, okay, in his resume. And so he's in hot pursuit. And so it says that he was in hot pursuit, and he goes there. He says, okay, is Sisera here? And then he goes, Jael goes, yes, come in. And here, Barak is thinking, yes, she's got him in one of her tents, okay? And he wants to get that kill. Goes in, to his surprise, Sisera is dead. No honor for him, okay? And then the story kind of ends like that. And you go, okay, what just happened? And so there were 5 characters that were introduced. Who gets the most honor? Question to you guys. Some of you guys might say Jael because that's what God said through the prophet Deborah. Some might say Deborah because she's the prophet and she prophesied and it came true. All of this came true, right? Some of you guys still might think Barak because he still obeyed God. He's the one who defeated the army, right? The chariots. The answer is none of them. None of them gets the honor. The way the story is written, the readers, as they're reading this part of Judges, are saying no one gets the honor except God himself. No one is honored except God himself. And this is emphasized throughout the story. I want to point out the verses to you. You can write it down if you want. The emphasis on God's action and doing. Verse 7. It says, I will lead. It's God saying that. Verse 9. For the Lord will deliver. It's Lord who will deliver. Verse 14. The Lord has given Sisera into your hands. Has not the Lord? Verse 15. The Lord routed. It is God who does it. It never says Barak defeated the army. It doesn't say Jael defeated the army. But it does say at the end, which is a summary verse or summary passage, verse 23, on that day, God subdued Jabin, king of Canaan, before the Israelites. And the hand of the Israelites pressed harder and harder against Jabin, king of Canaan, until they destroyed him. The honor goes to God. What is most important and honorable is when we as people of God honor God. It's not about our pursuit of honor. It's not about my achievement, but it is when we recognize that God is the one who is taking action. God is even with this random act by Jael, okay? He's the one who's using it. So even the random events that happen in your life, it is not out of God's control. It is under the sovereignty of God, and is happening precisely because God intended it to happen for His honor, for His glory. But then you know what we do is that by pursuing our own honor, we pursue honor and glory for ourselves, and then we rob God of the honor that is due Him. So often we do that. In our ministry, in our workplaces, in the things that He has you engaged in our relationships, whatever that you may be doing, you are, in a way, seeking honor for yourself. FBA is starting today, right? Why do guys play FBA? Some play for fun. Some play to win that championship, right? FBA championship. What is there? There's no trophy, nothing, right? It's all about just honor, man. Like, I want to win this. And why do we become competitive? Because I want to win. I want glory for myself. Now, is that bad? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Because the way you play, way you handle losing, way you handle how you play will be different if your goal isn't to bring honor to yourself. If it is to honor God, it's going to be different. There are a lot of complaints about FBA. I'm addressing this because it starts today, okay? There are a lot of complaints about FBA. I guarantee there are going to be complaints to the referees, the new system that you guys are putting in, okay? You know why? Precisely because we want to win. We want honor for ourselves. But if you have your goal as honoring God first and foremost, then that's going to change. I guarantee it. And that has not been happening in FBA. Even though that's one of our goals, it has not been happening. Let's make it happen this year. Can I get an amen from the guys? Amen. All right. You heard it, women. All right? So keep them accountable. But not only in FBA, it is the same thing in anything that we do. Whether it is work, in relationships, just anything that you're engaged in. If you are out to get honor for yourself, your process and the way you go about doing things will be very different. But what is most important and honorable is that we honor God. Honor God in everything that we do. And when we do that, your life will change. It's going to make a difference. Men will step up as men of faith. Women will step up as supporters of men. It's not a subordinate role, okay? We're going to step up together as men and women of faith. And this church, and the church, the universal church, is going to grow because we are honoring God. And so let us all honor God. Let us realize that through this story, that honoring God is primary, that it is the number one thing that all Christians, all God's people, has to pursue. Let's pray.